Do you know that there are 7 laws when it comes to being a successful property investor? Now, the function of a law is to protect you. So the moment that you step outside that law, then your protection is gone. And for that reason, it is important to understand what are these laws and how can these laws protect you. I'm Dreyer. I'm the founder of the Wealth Creators Method, where we help entrepreneurs and investors to create, to grow, and to protect their wealth. So today, welcome to the 7 laws of a property investor. And we're going to look at the first law. And the first law basically says this: invest in yourself first. I see by far the biggest mistake, in other words, people do not obey this law, is they get into a property transaction thinking that property is a great investment or a long-term investment, and that is the worst thing that most people can do. So let me take you on a little journey and show you where this problem started in my life, and maybe you can associate with that. When I started making money, the first thing that I wanted to do was to buy a property, and the reason for that was everyone told me that the property is a great investment. At that point in time in my life, I studied to become a certified financial planner. I was a financial advisor, and all the people around me would say to me, get into property as quickly as possible. The normal things: get the best property, the biggest property that you can afford in the best area, the normal stuff. And I fell for that. But about 5 years later, Tanya, my wife, keeps meticulous record of every single thing. And I took that and I put it into those days a Lotus spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet. And to my horror, I made a discovery that I don't think you want to do the same calculation. Although in the webinars I show you how to do this calculation. But I added up all costs associated with having that specific property. And the end result of that was frightening. Because in my mind, my belief system, I thought that my house was a great investment. But in real life, I discovered this was the last thing. This was a lie. It was not an investment at all. In fact, this thing could keep me from getting to financial freedom. And I would not even know that. And this is where this first law started, because I realized that you can't just listen to other people, because they can tell you whatever they want you to believe. And this is where the first law comes into play: invest in yourself. In other words, we have to take the responsibility to find out what is the truth, and if it's the truth, and how that truth is going to help us in order to achieve our goals. Not someone else, not the estate agent's goals, or the attorney that's going to do the transfer, or the insurance guy that's going to write the policy, or the bank that is going to give the loan. I'm talking about what is your goal, and will this property help you to get to that goal, yes or no? And this is where the first law comes in: invest in yourself. And that is where my journey started, because as soon as I realized how much money this property has cost me, and that it is going to keep me for that same amount of investment, if I could do a better investment, from retirement, from financial freedom, that is where my journey started. But that journey, that invest in yourself first, there's actually 2 parts to it. The first part is the investment in yourself, the personal development, that knowledge that you have to gain. So when we look at the 4 high-value skills that we teach here at the Wealth Creators Method, the first one is high-value mental skills. This is about the belief system, the value system, the way that we operate, our attitude towards investments. And if that attitude is not to invest in yourself, to find out, first of all, who are you? What are your goals? What motivates you? Why are you prepared to put in the time and the effort, let's call it the blood, sweat, and tears, in order to get to your goal? If you do not understand that, and you do not understand yourself, you're not going to take the responsibility to put in the time and the effort that is necessary in order to study and to understand the risks that are associated with property investments. Okay, so that's the first part. Once you've got that, the rest is actually easy. In other words, to invest in property is 95% mentally. It's a psychological game that you're playing. And it's only 5% the rest. The rest is very, very simple. But the rest takes mental attitude, to have that attitude in order to understand how it works. So when I started this process, I discovered that property's got 27 variables. So let me give you an example here in South Africa. We've got a fluctuating interest rate. At the moment, as I'm doing this recording, it's relatively low. I think it's about 7 or 8%. But I've been in the game where the interest rate has been more than 24%. Now just imagine if that happens and you buy a property at, let's say, 7% and the interest rate goes up to 17%. Then suddenly a reasonable property, or a property that you thought would be a great investment, is going to become an absolute nightmare. Luckily for me in 87, I've already discovered this in 84 when the interest rate went up to more than 24% on our bonds. So that is just one variable. But in that variable, there's another. What is the term? That's a second variable. Now, property has got 27 variables. And we have to understand this. And this is why the first law of property is invest in yourself first. Invest in yourself to find out what are these 27 variables. Because here's the trick. What I've discovered was that these variables are actually the risks that are associated with property. So what is risk? Risk is when you do not know what you're doing. So if you buy a property and you do not know the 27 variables and you did not identify these variables, you are taking massive, massive risk. And this is why this first law becomes so important, because the moment that I can identify the risk, now I can get to the skill sets. Because if I know how to mitigate this risk, if I can prevent this risk from happening, or in the event that this risk is happening, I've got a plan B and a plan C, or I've got a method or a way to mitigate this risk so that this risk does not affect me. That is when you become a serious property investor. But to do that, you have to obey the first law, which is to invest in yourself in order to invest the time and the effort and taking the responsibility to understand how the property game works. And only by obeying that, you're going to get to understand the risk. Now, here's the trick. The moment that I know what the risk is, and I can find a way to offset the risk, or several ways, because there's never just one way. There are several ways to offset each and every one of these risks. That means I'm building my skill. Now, here at the Wealth Creators Method, this is what we do. First skill, high value mental skills. That's the first skill. The second skill is high income skill, high business skill, high investment skill. The high investment skill, property is one of those skills that I've acquired very early in my life, because it's by far the easiest. There's only 27 variables. You know, when it comes to business, it's about 503 risks that we have to identify and mitigate. The last time that I checked many, many years ago. But with property, it's straightforward, 27 variables. And each and every one of these variables or risks, we can manage by gaining the skills. And this is exactly what we do. So I want to invite you to a webinar where we're going to dive a lot deeper into this. And taking the first law into consideration, that is where most people that invest in property, or most of my students, where they've started off. They've attended a webinar to figure out if this makes sense to them and if this is something that they are prepared to do. In other words, to take the responsibility to actually learn how these risks work, because in property you're going to find always that the lower the risk becomes, in other words, the less money it's going to cost you, the higher the growth is going to be. And it's only the growth on your investment that's going to make you rich, taking risk into consideration. So all we have to do is to mitigate the risk. But you can't mitigate the risk unless you know the risk and how to mitigate or offset these risks. And this is all there is about property. Now, where does this fit into the bigger plan? Because unless you know your goal, there's no ways that you can work backwards and say, okay, that's my goal. This is what I've got available. And this is the path that I can follow, the method that I can follow, or the strategy that I can follow. And this is where the Wealth Creator strategy comes into play. The Wealth Creator strategy is the intelligent use of limited resources to go from where you are to where you want to be in the shortest possible time with the least amount of risk. starting off with risk. And that is why the first law is to invest in yourself, to understand these risks, not only the mental risk, but also the 27 risk factors that are associated with property. And the moment that you're getting this, then property is easy. Now, what's the outcome of this nightmare that I had when I started to discover that property is not a great investment? And by the way, in the webinar, I will show you actually, and you'll find the link down in the description area if you are interested to attend that webinar. You're going to find that the reason why I say property is a bad investment, you're going to find in that webinar. You're also going to find why more properties is better is one of the biggest lies ever. You're also going to find that by paying back your bond, that is a good thing. It's one of the biggest lies. There's a place for it on condition that you understand the risk and on condition that you understand how it works. But all of that you're going to discover by investing in yourself, by just attending, for example, a 2-hour webinar. There's going to be a question and answer session where you can ask me anything. I will not leave until the end, the last question has been answered. So normally, although we prepare for 2 hours, I had webinars that went on for like 3 hours. But I promise you that will be the best investment that you can ever make, because it's better to understand how property works so that you can make an informed decision before you actually buy. And by the way, that is one of the tricks about property. Property, you make the money when you buy the property. Actually, it's when you make the offer to purchase the property, because in that offer, there are exit strategies that you have to bring in. But you can only do that by investing in yourself. There's no other way, my friend, and that is how this first law, invest in yourself, is going to protect you. I want you to make use of this law and really invest in yourself to understand your goal, to understand how property can fit into that, how property can give you all the security and all the growth that you'll ever need in order to become very, very successful and have a life of abundance. We retired at the age of 37. At 30, I made these breakthroughs and saw what a waste property can be. But at the same time, that is where the learning, the investment started in myself. And literally 7 years, we were financially free. Nowadays, you can do it in less time, simply because of technology and simply because it is a lot easier to understand these risks and to offset these risks on condition that you are prepared to invest in yourself. So I really hope that you found this lesson valuable. So if there's any value that you found in this lesson, I want you first of all to like it. That helps with the algorithm with YouTube and with Facebook in order to get it out to more and more people. And then secondly is to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber to this channel, where on a weekly basis, I'm going to bring you more and more tips, tricks of not only investing in property, but investing in property, in cryptos, and becoming a wealth creator, where you will know by investing in yourself and by applying the first law in order to create, to grow, and to protect your wealth, and therefore build a legacy for your family. So in the next lesson, we're going to look at another law that's going to protect you. That is called the second law. And I'll see you in that one.